Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Living Life, A Life You. I am your host, Dr. Veronica Garcia, and today I am joined by a super awesome member of the Life University campus, Dr. Jerry Hawkman. Hi, welcome.
How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good.
I'm so excited for this interview because you are, and if you didn't know, you are the wizard of chiropractic. Dr. Hawkman, tell me a little bit of what inspired you to be a chiropractor.
Well, interestingly enough, it's not that inspirational a story. Mm-hmm. My wife had me go to a chiropractor when I was suffering from chronic torticollis. I had been in the construction world.
Okay.
And working over my head for many days and months and years. Eventually, I couldn't turn my head. Mm-hmm. And I just sort of put up with it. And she said, "Why don't you go see my chiropractor?" And I said, "You're what?" My mother had actually been injured by a chiropractor.
Interesting.
Quite severely. So we didn't tell her. And I went to the chiropractor's office in West Palm Beach, Florida, and in walks Dr. John Frankowich, 6'8", with hands about the size of catcher's mitts.
Oh, wow.
So I figured he'll either help me or really hurt me bad.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short, he helped me enormously.
Wow.
I got my first chiropractic adjustment. I'm glad he didn't tell me what he was going to do. Mm-hmm. And I walked out of that office at least 50% better. Mm-hmm. I went back, I think, one more time. And he finished up and said I was fine. So I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I didn't like my work, although I denied that I didn't like it. But my wife, Rose, could tell otherwise. And one thing led to another, and I made a decision to become a chiropractor. So I came here to Life in 1980, and really what inspired me was Dr. Frankowich and his nice air-conditioned office with his fish tank and his long white coat, which I've never worn. I adjust comfortably, and I'm not going to wear a long white coat. And it was no more inspirational than that, but it was one of the two correct moves I've made in my life. The other was getting married to my wife.
I was about to say.
I've done two things correctly. And I came here to Life because it was the closest college to Florida at the time. There were no Florida colleges. And my folks were getting older, so I didn't want to be too far away from home if something happened. And it worked out.
Look at you. And around what age did you start at chiropractic
I was
school?
30.
Wow.
Yeah, I had been working in construction for 7 years.
Wow.
And even though I made good money there and provided, we had a house and 2 cars, the whole bit, I didn't like what I was doing.
Passion-driven work is so important.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It really is.
And tell me, so how long have you been practicing?
40 years.
Wow. And you are known as the wizard.
Correct.
Why?
Another faculty member pinned that moniker on me when I asked her to adjust me one day. And she couldn't believe that I asked her. And I didn't understand why she couldn't believe that I asked her. She was a faculty member, and I assumed she knew what she was doing. We were teaching the same course, and she did a fine job. And she just started calling me the wizard, which is sort of ridiculous. I'm not a wizard, I'm a chiropractor. But it stuck because I was given the choice years ago to teach either SOT or extremities.
Yeah.
So I picked SOT selfishly, thinking that it would help me more in my practice because it would force me to learn a totally new technique, one that I had taken in chiropractic college and passed, but didn't really use.
Cared for it, yeah.
So I delved into SOT as a faculty member and discovered that it made more sense to me than anything else I had ever heard in chiropractic.
Wow.
And just because you know SOT, people can look at you a little bit like a wizard because so few people know it.
By heart and understand it.
And understand it and use it to the betterment of the patient. And I just saw a patient this morning before I came here who's got some complex problems that have really never been helped. And through SOT, I've been able to help her.
Wow.
So I know it's power. And just because you know SOT, people think, oh, you must be a wizard. You know? But I'm not a wizard.
Tell me, let's talk a little bit about SOT. What is SOT for those that have no idea?
Sacro-Occipital Technique was developed by Major Bertrand Desjarnette, a chiropractor and an osteopath, starting in 1929. And he's one of the few people I've met, few teachers I've met, who practiced for 60 years.
60.
He practiced for 60 years, and most chiropractors don't. And he was one of these people who was never satisfied with what he learned in school, even though he had 2 degrees, chiropractic and osteopathy. He felt he didn't know anything, where in fact he knew more than most. And he was able to teach other people what he was learning and what he was doing, to the point where in 1950, when he had been in practice about 20 years, it was one of the major techniques done in the country. And he gave seminars all over the place, all over the world, actually. So he spread it. It became popular. And it's based on the idea that the 2 ends of the spine are the most important, which we agree with here at Life, because the first thing students learn is X-ray analysis and palpation of the low back. And the first technique they take is toggle. So we're still following that rule. And having taught most techniques that are taught here now, we always stress the bottom and the top. So I think chiropractors in general tend to do that, and he latched onto that and realized that the very bottom was the sacrum and the very top was the occiput, and he called it Sacro-Occipital Technique, and it was based upon some osteopathic theories, which are still theories. But if you follow that line of thought and that practice model, really good things happen, and you can be the one that helps in these tough cases, which is what we need more of.
And with SOT, because it is beautifully, simply, and complex at the same time, just like the body is, you've had and dived into research within it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I didn't have to dive into research. I was given the opportunity to by Dr. Sid, our founder, who came up with a neat idea to get more faculty involved in research by giving us time off from teaching.
Interesting.
So when I started teaching here, I was part-time practice, part-time teacher. Then I became part-time practice, full-time teacher. So for about 35 years, I practiced about 20 hours a week and taught about 20 hours a week. So I was very busy. But he gave us the opportunity to do some research and get out of the classroom, and I was the first faculty member to jump at that opportunity. And we had some high-tech equipment in the research department where I could do some very basic research on SOT. And after I did my research and gathered my data, I was wondering if I could get published in JMPT, which is the premier research journal in chiropractic and has been for a long time. And my research guide, Dr. Kathy Hoyris at the time, she said, well, maybe. Here's the guide of how to write a research paper. Why don't you do it and I'll check it over.
Okay.
So I did it and she checked it over and we sent it in and it was denied, which is typical.
Yes.
And I sent it in again and it was denied again. And I sent it in a third time and it was accepted. And so I got published in JMPT. I can't brag about my research career because that was about it. Other than my articles that I wrote for Today's Chiropractic.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of articles for Today's Chiropractic over the years, and some local journals. So I discovered I enjoyed sharing my knowledge with others, and I sort of enjoyed writing, but I sort of didn't enjoy real research, the tedium of it. So after my experience with JMPT, that was enough. I've helped other people with their research, but I'm barely qualified to do that.
Gotcha.
It's not my, it's not fun to me, but I understand its importance, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Well, by jumping into that opportunity from Dr. Sid, it allowed to open up the doors to the research even department that we have today.
And I played a very small part in making a mark for life university in the research world, because the research world is pretty cutthroat and extremely political. And that's another reason I don't care for it.
Tell me about, you've been teaching here for a while. Exactly how long?
Pretty much 40 years.
40 years, right?
My entire career.
Yeah.
In one way or another, yeah.
Wow. So tell me, what are some of those courses that you have taught along the years, and which one is your favorite one?
Well, my favorite by far is SOT.
Hands down.
It's just the most interesting to me. But I was the lead Thompson instructor for over 20 years. And SOT, I've been working with Full Spine 3 for many years now, and I enjoy most of that. I've also helped to teach Full Spine 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I've also taught muscle testing and goniometry, which are now part of technique review, I think, or I'm not really sure. And so many courses over the years, but I narrowed myself down to technique courses. And I've taught every technique course at Life with the exception of Gonstead and Activator. I think I've taught every other technique course.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I had the honor and the opportunity to learn from you, Thompson and SOT.
You're so kind.
And no, it's true. It's true. It really
especially
is
during these podcasts.
It really is an honor to have someone that you say, well, I'm not a wizard, but the way that you were so passionate about each of these techniques and sharing that knowledge and sharing that information that allowed us to kind of just go into these waves of stories and how to clinically implement those. It honestly made a difference.
I'm glad.
So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. I am passionate about my work.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm able to do that in an educational setting. It's fun.
And with that, being so passionate about your work, what is a story of maybe a patient that you've always held close and dear to you? If you can narrow it down to one or two.
There's a few, and this particular one went to a research conference. I didn't write a journal article, but I did create a poster presentation. I've had several that have been accepted. This was just an amazing case history of a life graduate in the nutrition program came in with his wife, and they were despondent. And he had suffered terrible migraines every day for 7 years.
Wow.
And he was on the verge of suicidal. And she had to stay home to help take care of him because he was non-functional.
Right.
And of course, I got the typical story of I've been everywhere.
Right.
So I knew my work was cut out for me. So I was interviewing him, and I asked him his past history, and part of that was a telephone conversation he had with supposedly an osteopath from New Jersey, who told him that it sounded like he had a subluxation of a cranial bone called the sphenoid. And the minute I heard that, because of my background in SOT, the Lovett brother, or the low back partner of the sphenoid, is coccyx. So I figured, I bet nobody checked his coccyx, because as a rule, chiropractors generally don't. It's not something that I would necessarily do on every new patient. And I asked him if he had ever fallen on his butt, and he said no. And his wife butted in and said, maybe 1,000 times. So I was wondering why the disparity.
Yeah.
Well, he was a semi-pro hockey player.
Oh.
And she saw him fall on his butt 1,000 times, because they all do. So I decided to do a spot shot on coccyx, and he had a broken coccyx.
Wow.
Which is an anterior displacement. So I decided to adjust his coccyx and his sphenoid, which I knew from SOT how to do that. And I did it, and to make a long story short, his 7 years of migraines disappeared. And this was a case where I wasn't trusting the patient to be completely honest with me, because that's a remarkable thing. So that's one case that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How just the wanting of a person to just take a leap of faith and just calling a chiropractor and getting results, just trusting and getting results.
Yeah, they were desperate.
Yeah. Yeah, especially waiting until that last end. I can't leave you alone. I just get goosebumps because you've truly impacted that whole family's life, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I was amazed. You know, I always tell my students, my patients taught me chiropractic, not just the school.
Yeah.
Because I didn't come from a chiropractic family. I came from an almost anti-chiropractic family. So I didn't have that fire, that knowledge, that truth that so many students who come here have, because they grew up with chiropractic.
Right.
I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I relied on my patients to tell me, this works. And I would look at them, are you just telling me that to make me feel better? I almost didn't believe them.
Yeah.
And then I had a young man come in with simple low back pain, terrible low back pain, probably 9 out of 10, who had a spondylo. And I knew what Clay Thompson did for spondylos, so I did it. And he went from a 9 to a 0 after one adjustment. It was, you know, another word. Are you really being honest with me?
Yeah.
You know? So those two stand out in my mind. I love it.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful that you're still providing care and loving for your patients, loving for the students, and being involved and just being everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Well, you know, almost all the students are way younger than me, so you guys keep me feeling young.
Good.
Otherwise, I'm around old people all the time, and it's terribly depressing. That's actually one of the reasons I retired from regular practice, because all these old people came to me, and of course they refer other old people. And you know how we have that saying in chiropractic, there is a limitation to matter? There is. So
you hit it.
I wanted to get away from that limitation and be around younger people more often. So my wife said I could retire, so I did.
I love that.
But I still see people down the street in the clinic. I think there's 2 or 3 of us who do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a beautiful opportunity to just be surrounded by individuals like you that have truly been a pioneer and have impacted the life of most chiropractors that come from Life University. It's really, really
in one
beautiful.
way or another, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter which one, but it has been. It has shaped us into the decisions and who we are
I'll tell you
today.
a funny story. I was running on the beach in Jekyll Island. My wife was there. And I hear, hey, Dr. Hawkman. Got to be kidding me. And we stopped for gas at a remote gas station somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Florida. Hey, Dr. Hawkman.
Yeah, and it will continue happening. I'm sure it will continue happening.
So my statement is, they know me. I don't remember them. I don't know their name. And I'll be guilty of stopping you in 20 years and saying, what quarter are you in?
Remind me again, Thompson or
SOT?
you
graduated. 20 years ago, sorry. So that's nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That talks to the impact that you've had in our lives.
I'm very grateful to this school.
Yeah.
for keeping me.
And it's been 50 years of the university just going and transforming lives and creating beautiful, amazing individuals, whether it is in the chiropractic program, the master's, and the undergraduate program. We are celebrating 50 years. What is something that you hope to continue seeing in the university for the next 50 years?
Don't lose the vitalism, because we're threatened more and more. And medicine is medicine, and there's nothing wrong with medicine.
It's needed, of course.
I believe that most medical doctors want to help patients. I'm not anti-medical, never have been, but I'm more pro-chiropractic. And you have to give the body credit for having some innate intelligence. If you don't, you're going to hurt people.
Yeah.
So we can't ever lose that. I don't care if we're the only school in that realm. We have to protect that. Otherwise, the uniqueness of chiropractic will be gone.
Will fade away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I'm definitely 100% there with you. Vitalism saved my life, it saved my family's life, and it continues to do so, whether we want to explain it or not. It just shows up.
Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
My
this
pleasure.
beautiful conversation. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for taking a little bit of your time to spend with us.
It was fun.
Yes. I'm glad you had fun. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of Living Life, Life You. Bye.